Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Morning Coffee and a Thought brought to you by Wings of Faith Ministries. Back in the Gospels in Mark chapter 3, the religious authorities accused Jesus of his being able to relieve demon possession by the power of Beelzebub. In other words, they thought he was using the power of Beelzebub to drive out demons from those who were demon possessed. Jesus answered this accusation by telling them that if that was true, then Satan's kingdom had then become divided. The important thought that I want to talk about today is he says that if a kingdom becomes divided, or even if a household becomes divided, they won't be able to last very long. And that's the subject we want to talk about. Right now, we have tremendous social, political, and even religious divisions all around us. And some of these divisions have crept within the body of Christ. So how do we navigate our way through all these divisions that have come into the church? That's the thought we want to tackle this morning. First of all, we want to remind you that Morning Coffee and a Thought can be seen every Friday on our YouTube channel beginning at 1 p.m. and every Sunday morning on our Facebook page at 8 in the morning, and we hope you will join us. Also, if you have a prayer request, if you want information, or if you want to make a donation to the ministry, you can do all of that at wingsoffaithministries.ca. And now back to our thought. Near the latter end of the first century, the Apostle John could sense that there were divisions beginning to appear in the churches in Asia. Now, John was the pastor of the church in Ephesus, the main church of those 7 churches that existed in Asia Minor. And so he writes a letter/essay to these churches, which we call 1 John. And he wants to talk about the divisions that have occurred within the early church and why they have occurred. And so he will tackle that question in this letter. First of all, he wants to reassure his hearers and give them grounds for the voices they may be hearing. And first of all, he says there were people who were part of us, who are no longer part of us, that are now speaking and preaching a different gospel. And he wants to lay down the ground rules of what is true and what is false. What's the difference of light and darkness in this world they are living in? And so he begins by saying that 2 things have to happen so that his recipients will know that these people are true and walking in the true light of the gospel. First of all, they must be propagating that Jesus Christ was fully human. He will word it that Jesus Christ came in the flesh, and that he was buried, crucified, rose again, and that all power and authority, as in Matthew, has been given to him. That was the first real tenet of the gospel, that Jesus Christ was fully human, yet still God, and that he pre-existed with God. The second tenet that John wants to remind his readers of is how that gospel is expressed. And he said it has to be expressed through love. The opponents that had come to be known as false prophets were now causing not love but division within the church. John said they were preaching a different gospel because they had a different view of Jesus Christ. They were saying that maybe Christ wasn't fully human, and because of this different view of Christ, that changed how people would live their lives. But John said, and I go back to the two tenets that John wanted his readers to understand. Number one, Jesus Christ was the Son of God. He pre-existed with God, and he was fully human. And secondly, that the message of the gospel was love for each other and love for the world. In other words, that gospel should not be causing divisions within the church. In chapter 4 of this essay, John will then tell his readers to test the spirits, and that's the title of this thought. He said that every voice that you hear that does not have those two tenets of the gospel, first of all, that Jesus Christ was fully human, that he died and rose again, that all power and authority belonged to him, and secondly, that his was a message of love in which he showed by giving his life for the world, and that love should be expressed for each other and for the world. If these two tenets were not part of the voices they were hearing, then they were not part of light and the love of Christ. Today, we live in a world that is intensely divided. Everybody seems to have a tribe that they live in. It's always them versus us. And this was exactly the type of teaching that John wrote this essay against in 1 John. Our gospel is not to be tribal. We have one gospel, that is Jesus Christ is Lord, and Jesus Christ loves those both within the church and he loves the world. There is no them versus us. As in that day, voices from without the church have now started to penetrate into the church and are turning believers against each other. This is not of Christ. The gospel of Christ is not about them versus us. It's not about one opinion versus another opinion. The gospel of Jesus Christ is a message of reconciliation. God wanting to reconcile the world to himself. There are no room, and there should be no room, in the church for voices who talk about them versus us. How do we navigate through? Well, we have to go back to what John said. The tenets of our gospel, it's very simple. That Jesus Christ came in the flesh. That Jesus pre-existed with God and came to earth and was fully human and experienced all the things that we as humans experienced. Secondly, the tenet of the gospel is reconciliation. Christ came to our earth to reconcile us to God. John 3:16 says, God so loved the world that he sent his only Son to this world to save us from sin, to reconcile the world to himself. The gospel message is simple. Jesus Christ came to this world to save sinners, of whom I can personally say I'm one of the worst. But his is a message of love. And in the church, there should be no room for them versus us. That's my thought today as we navigate our way through this world and through life in this world. Our gospel is about reconciliation, the love of Christ, and peace to those who come to believe in him. Have a great morning. Enjoy your coffee, and we'll see you next week.